I just want to introduce this man. We've got him covered up because of his previous history and just to protect him and who he is. But first and foremost, I want to sort of say thank you very much. I just want to get down to it and sort of ask, when and how did you get started in the sort of gang side of things?
I don't know, it was just a natural, I suppose, progression of stuff, one of those mischievous kids in school, hanging out with your pals after school, fights, being challenged, not liked being challenged and reacting to those challenges, forming friendships with people that are like-mindedness of yourself, and I suppose that's how it progressed, really.
Did it start with the low level things and then progress from there?
I suppose not really. My thing was always, I learned from an early age that violence got results. I think from my first fight when I was about 9, and after I came out victorious, it was how people were different around me and stuff, and I used it to manipulate people because it got the results that I desired.
In what would your average day look like in that sort of crime gangster style life? Is it what you see on the movies, or is it completely different?
No, it is completely different. The movies have to have that artistic license to draw people in, but it was dark, it was gruesome. It's not a place that you're ever comfortable in at any time. You didn't know who was who, and so you was never comfortable 100% in that situation. Only with people that you was close with, so you had to have trusted people around you, and even then, unfortunately, it wasn't 100% sure that they'd be lost.
In with regards to that, where you said they had to sort of become family, and what would happen if one of those members crossed you? If there was a double crossing.
Well, again, it would be a violent outcome. Definitely a violent outcome, 100%.
Okay.
You wouldn't be wanting to kind of wipe him out and move on from it.
So it's just a set a precedent, then teach a lesson, so the word gets around, and then you're not going to sort of get crossed again.
There was that. There was that. For the if I'm going to be totally honest, for the external show, for everyone else to see, to send a message. But then internally, the majority of the time, it's all fear-based. You're scared of what people will think about you. You're scared that if you don't make a reaction, what's going to happen. So there's a lot of fear based around this lifestyle.
Was there ever a concern in any of these situations where you'd get your comeuppance by a rival or someone that's trying to make a name for themselves? And was there a concern that if something goes wrong, that could cost me time inside?
With rivals and all that stuff, it was just how it is. If you're gonna, do something to someone that expect, consequences. So that's why, you just got to go in hard and make sure that the people that you do it with, they don't want to retaliate. And there's always that issue with prison, but at the time you're not thinking about it. You just got to do what you got to do. It's them and us. And if you get caught, then you have to suffer the consequences, but you don't think about that at the time.
Is there a case then that you have a switch and you go into that mindset that the moment in time if something happens, you don't even think about prison. You're not in that mind.
So you're not in that mindset. You can't. Yeah, no, you can't be in that mindset. You're just there, you know. And unfortunately, yeah, I've been caught and I've been in prison, but you know, that's just again, you've done what you've done. You're gonna suffer the consequences.
And when you said you've done prison there, and is this sort of similar life that you go into prison and then people are trying to make a name for themselves, so then you're in the inside in between four walls.
Yeah, you know, prison is it's not a place that's recommended. You know, it's not big, it's not clever, it's not glamorous. It's just it's a pit. To be fair, it's a pit. You know, they treat you like animals, and to a degree, your mindset you become animalistic. So you can imagine what happens when you stick a bunch of animals in a cage. There's going to be carnage and chaos.
Okay. What would you say the biggest risk that you face on a day-to-day basis?
Inside or outside?
In both scenarios.
In both. Well, listen, outside, you know, you never, you know, you're risking your liberty, you're risking your life. You know, depending on what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. You know, inside again, you know, it's a dangerous place inside. Fortunately, you know, my experience of it was different. But yeah, I've experienced danger in prison. And it's not a nice place to be because there's no escape. You're stuck with that person or people on the wings, you know, and every day it can be difficult.
Are you happy and comfortable to go into detail about the danger that you faced inside?
Well, mine was relatively okay. You know, it wasn't really danger. It was a misunderstanding. Well, not a misunderstanding. A disagreement of two heads, and it became an issue, and a physical fighting issue. You know, and that's as far as it went with me and that particular fella. Suffice to say, he got moved on from the prison. But yeah, and that was me and that particular guy. But there's been people that have come into prison on suspicious charges and been put in main population, and yeah, they got their what was coming to them. Okay.
Once you're in that sort of gangster lifestyle, is it hard to get out once you're in that position?
It's the mentality. You think it's your mentality. Your mind tells you it's hard to get out. You know, you think you're in this glamorous lifestyle, and you think that this is the norm, and this is what life should be like. But it's not. It's not big. It's not clever. So I suppose you're a victim of your own mindset by trying to convince yourself that this is my life and this is the way it's supposed to be. But you know, when you take a long, hard look at it, that's not the reality.
Okay.
You know, jails, institutions, and death. That's the reality.
Okay. Now, I know that you're no longer involved in that sort of activity anymore, and there's people out there that are stuck in a rut and they can't get out of that. What advice could you give to them? Because you're part of that trusted family. If you go out, that you're breaking that code, and there could be repercussions, and that there's surely a lot of people, I'm just second guessing, I don't know, there's a lot of people that are scared to come out of that gang life. So what they do apart from leaving the country, what advice could you give where they're going to be able to be sort of safe from it?
Okay. I suppose the first answer would be, don't get involved in it in the first place. Would be the pure answer. But sometimes it's not that simple. People that get involved in it, sometimes haven't got a choice. Deprivation, demographics, where people live, you put people in a confined space and you don't give them any other choices than criminality, then that's the way they're gonna go down. So it is tough. I'm not saying that there's no easy answer. So, but for people that are already involved, I would say, when you get that opportunity to have a word with yourself, have that deep look at yourself, and when you see all the pain, the destruction, the upset, the anger that you're causing, probably not only to society but to yourself, then you'll realise that that's not the path you should be taking.
Now, I want to sort of go a little bit deeper with regard to your answer there. Did you go through that pain? What caused you to decide, I don't want this life anymore? Was it something that happened? Was it the pain? Was it the upset causing?
Yeah. As I said, it was stripping me, it was leaving me empty, to the point where, you'll be sitting on a substantial amount of money and you'll still be unhappy. So yeah, the pain, the destruction, what was happening internally to myself, kind of was gave me the kick. Kind of want to turn my life around.
Okay, and you said you were sat there, where you had money, and it's not fixing the problem. And obviously, there's a lot of people out there that get into that lifestyle, get used to that sort of money. So, would you say now you're happier without the money, and you feel more complete, or what is it? How has your life changed?
Don't get me wrong, everyone likes a down note, so I still like the money, but it's the roots of where you go down to obtain that, I'm spiritually happier, just being content with yourself, and being able to appreciate things, to be able to appreciate life, because life's precious. Life is very precious, and it can be taken away from us in an instant, so that's where I'm at.
Okay. Did you ever find yourself in a situation where you're saying that life is precious there, where you're put in a situation where you got shot at, you were held hostage, or you were tortured in any way?
Fortunately for me, no, that wasn't. It was more on the reverse side.
Okay. And that's just, tell me a bit about that. So, someone's done something wrong. Is there a level of planning, or do you just go in gung ho?
The sensible people plan it, and that's when it's cold and calculated and sadistic. So it's the planners you want to avoid.
Okay. Were you a planner?
I like planning.
Okay. And say, this is hard for me to ask this, but I've got to ask the question. Say I crossed you, and I've done something really serious to cross you. What's going to happen to me essentially?
I'd enjoy the planning. You could probably figure it out. It wouldn't end pretty for yourself.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Yeah.
What's the hardest thing you had to do in your position?
honest with yourself.
In terms of when you got out,
Just the reality of everything.
Just to be honest with yourself, to know it's not.
Is there still the temptation?
Okay. Is there still the temptation there today? Is there still contact?
Oh, listen, it's it's a whole psychological thing and how you view the world and stuff. Sometimes can view the world, a little bit on the off-key side, but it's about being able to, arrest that part of your brain, and put it to one side. There's still times, you could be driving and someone cuts you up and, you wanna slit his throat. But the point is you don't act on it today.
So that's the biggest thing, learning how to
Managing that sort of thing.
It's all right
Because you've got
it's all right to want to think about slitting someone's throat. It's just don't slit someone's throat.
Okay.
And you've like we said, you've turned your life around. What does your sort of life look like now? What's your lifestyle and how has it changed?
It's content. It's better. Freedom. That's the word. Freedom.
Do you think that now you're in the state that you're in, you feel more at peace with yourself? You know there's not a risk of prison.
Content. Listen, don't get me wrong. If your family's threatened, then you got to do what you got to do. But today, I don't consciously wake up and think, oh no, getting 100 years wrapped around my bollocks is a good idea. So that's where I am today.
And were you connected with anybody that's very famous?
There's no comment.
Okay. And I just want to end on the sense that there's people out there that live this life and they think it's the right life. The whole point of this was that it's been inspirational, and what would there's a percentage of people that get in this because of boredom or they want to make a name for themselves. How can you, if you were to live your life again, what would you do differently? How would you find that inner peace straight from the off to get that power? Would it be taking up boxing? Would it be doing something else?
Probably, it'd be probably doing something like that, probably would have channeled those energies into something positive, some type of martial art, boxing, so yeah, it would have probably gone down that road.
Okay.
And, sports, or even academia, just channel those energies. But just catching it early, it really is, I believe, is the key. Being able to catch it early.
Okay.
Instead of going through that mad journey.
Okay. And what's your future look like from now?
By the grace of God, the future is bright. The future's positive. You still have the ups and downs, but the future's bright and it's positive.
Okay. So I just want to say thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. I know you're a busy man.
You're more than welcome.
And I know that I understand it's a little bit like we're in a room with the curtains closing up, but we had to do that. But I think the point from this story is it doesn't matter what situation you're in, you can turn your life around. You really, really can. But thank you.